If you think it's time to take a hammer to your bathroom scale and rip up that diet rulebook, welcome to Body Kindness. Hi everyone, it's Rebecca Scritchfield, author of Body Kindness and host of this podcast. I'm a health at every size dietitian, a certified exercise physiologist, a former chronic dieter, and a mom to 2 girls. Join me as I talk to guests about what it means to be good to ourselves and create a better life where well-being matters, not weight. Through these conversations, we'll reveal the challenging and surprising ways our culture keeps us searching for our worth in our appearance. Let's create a new view of health that's inclusive and built on compassion. Let's shake things up a bit and let's change the game.
You have to calculate your weight based on the pull of gravity at that exact latitude and longitude point. So we had to get a physics professor involved. My certification paperwork involved an equation with Greek letters that I did not understand at all. I was like, let me just fax this along. I assume someone at Guinness knows what this means. And then you have to have a camera on you at all times. And so luckily it was a looped course. So we had 2 go. It was like packing for an expedition.
That was Ragen Chastain. Don't let that tease fool you. I know we were giggling a lot, but this show is jam-packed with a lot of fitness humor, but also some real serious talk as well. And I just loved having Reagan as a guest. If you don't already know her, Ragen Chastain, she's a speaker, a writer. She's a certified health coach and thought leader in the fields of body image, health at every size, athletes at every size, and corporate wellness. She is a sought-after speaker in corporations, conferences, and throughout colleges, where she brings a captivating and motivating mix of humor. You'll definitely see that in our conversation, but also the hard facts too. She's spoken at Google, CalTech, and IvyQ. She runs the popular blog Dances with Fat. That's how I found her. And she is author of the book Fat, the Owner's Manual, and editor of the anthology The Politics of Size. She is frequently featured as an expert in print, radio, television, and documentary film. Reagan's a 3-time national dance champion and a 2-time marathoner who holds the Guinness World Record for heaviest person to complete a marathon female. Reagan co-founded the Fit Fatties Forum and Fad Activism Conference, and she lives in LA with her partner and their adorable dogs. She's currently training for an Ironman triathlon, and you'll get more details on what that process has been like for her. I'm so excited to hand this show over to you. It is mostly fitness focused, but we talk about weight stigma in the fitness community and practical, actionable things we all can do to make body kindness more inclusive and just for people of all size bodies. Before I get into it, I want to make 2 announcements. The first one is I'm so excited to be partnering with Rosie Molinari on a virtual workshop, and it's called Mend. And this is about healing what's broken through radical self-acceptance. You can learn more at bodykindnessbook.com/mend or shoot me an email, rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com. In addition, I have the 3-month trial for the Spiral Up Club. If you are interested in working with me more on the practice of body kindness and you think you might like the benefits of directed reflections that you can do on your own and also group support, then be sure to check that out. That's bodykindnessbook.com/spiralup. Reagan, welcome to Body Kindness. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, I just want to take a second to let listeners know how I came to know you. And honestly, it's because you're a freaking badass. But like in the early days of me realizing, okay, I don't want to do diet things anymore. It is like 2007, 2008, and really just feeling lost, like reading intuitive eating and learning about health at every size. You know, I just felt like I was a big lurker. And I want to say it was through the Size, Diversity, and Health website. Somebody somewhere said, oh, you got to check out this blog, Dances with Fat. And I was like, interesting. And I saw this amazing video of you cutting a rug like nobody's business. And I was just so inspired by watching your body move through space. And it really made me just rethink a lot of beliefs I had about movement and the meaning behind movement and behind what certain bodies can and couldn't do. And ever since then, I've just been a huge fan of yours, and I love everything you do, and it's really meaningful and important. So I'm just so happy to have the chance to talk with you today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. So appreciative of your work. And that video, like I'm sort of crying in my living room because that's exactly what I hope would happen when people watch that video. Is it would be like, especially like I get emails still from people who say, I just thought I couldn't dance at my size. I didn't try because I was told I was too big. And then I saw you and I was like, I signed up for dance classes that day. And that just like warms the cockles of my little heart that, you know, people are going out and doing something that they've always wanted to do, but have been told in a totally bullshit way that they can't. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. And that's the thing. You put something out there, you're not really sure the impact it's going to have. And then to get those emails, it's like, yes, purpose. It kind of rejuvenates your soul too, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Every time you get an email like that, it's like, yeah, I picked the right thing to do. Yes, I'm on the right path. Yes, I want to keep doing this. I can't even explain how humbling and meaningful it is when somebody takes the time to email and say, hey, you impacted me in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you've been doing it for a long time and you're still doing it. Let's take a chance to let the listeners know, if it is their first time getting to know you, I would love for you to just share who you are, what you do, what you're about. I think that'd be great.
Sure. So, hey, what's up, y'all? I speak and write full time about subjects like self-esteem, health at every size, athletes at every size, body image. And then I speak a lot to healthcare professionals about how to provide appropriate, competent treatment to fat patients. And so I started this whole thing. Actually, all I wanted to do was be a ballroom dancer, and it turned out I had to be a fat activist to get that done. But I didn't know that at the time. I had started taking dancing lessons with a friend. People said, oh, you guys should compete. And so we started competing. And at the first competition, like I foolishly thought it was going to be about my dancing. But judges instead were saying things like, what a waste of talent at your size. Like, you're going to lose weight, right? And as it progressed, I had judges tell me they wouldn't give me better scores until I lost weight. I had a judge tell me repeatedly she couldn't stand to look at me. And so, yeah, right? Which, again, I foolishly thought this would be about my, say, dance technique or, something related to that. Skill set, improvement over time. But no, it's about the size of my ass. So I started this blog, Dances with Fat, just to talk about my journey. And I kind of started it when I decided that I was no longer going to try to lose weight. Mm-hmm. I had sort of been on a health at every size journey, but I still had that idea in my mind, like maybe I'll try to lose weight. And then I decided I'd absolutely had enough. And so that sort of coincided with the time I started the blog. And when I started the blog, it was just for me and like 6 people, which included my mother. It never occurred to me that anybody outside of my friend circle would read the thing. And somehow I had it on WordPress and somebody found it and submitted an article, a post I wrote to Jezebel. And so I got 10,000 hits in one day, and I was sure that was the most hits I would ever get in my life. And I freaked out. I didn't even have a contact form. I didn't have comments up, like nothing. I had no way to contact me. So yeah, and so I started just writing about my personal journey, and then the more that I was working with health at every size and size acceptance, the more I started to write about those things, and then I started to get speaking requests, and about a little over 5 years ago now, I'm terrible with dates, I decided to do this work full time. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing that ever since. And so now that's my jam. And I feel incredibly grateful. It's my dream job to be able to do social justice work full time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's me.
And then what's your role in the Fat Activism online conference? Is that an ongoing thing? I know I was part of it as an attendee this year. Do you want to talk a little bit about that just generally so people know?
Sure. So for almost 5 years ago now, Jeanette DePatty and I started the Fad Activism Conference. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to bring together intersectional voices to talk about how we are doing fat activism and how we can move fat activism forward. Mm. And so we've had, amazing times and incredible speakers, including, sorry, of course, right now I'm going to blank on all the speakers. So anyway, we've had,
we have some wonderful people. You got to hear them.
Names,
well,
I don't know.
They can go to the website and find out.
Right. So yeah, we've had, incredible speakers, and it's fadactivismconference.com.
Mm-hmm.
Jeanette and I also co-founded, Jeanette DePatty, the fat chick, is off.
I have her book, The Fat Chick Works Out.
Yeah.
I love that book. I recommend that to all my clients, no matter what size. It's a great book.
Yeah, Jeanette is amazing. And so we're often partners in crime. Okay. So we co-founded a forum called the Fit Fatties Forum, which is now morphed into a big Facebook group with I think we're over 4,000 people now. And that's a place for people to talk about fitness from a weight neutral perspective. Uh-huh. And we founded it because we wanted a place like that. We both do different fitnessy things, and it's hard to go into the forums and every other post is about a diet or somebody who weighs half what I weigh complaining about their weight. And so we were like, there are people out there of all sizes who just want to come and talk about fitness and not talk about weight loss or dieting. And so we co-founded that as well. And it's Fit Fatties on Facebook. But yeah, so those are some of the projects that I've co-founded.
Cool. And they can, if they're on Facebook, they can request to join and they'll answer questions. And then it's a commitment to abide by some parameters in order to create a braver, safer place for everyone who's participating, right?
Exactly. We have some pretty strict rules about, obviously no diet talk, no weight loss talk, no food talk, because a lot of people in there are working through eating disorder stuff and are really triggered by that. So it's literally a place to talk about just fitness from a weight neutral perspective. But we do have, we've got people who are just working on, like, my goal is to walk to the mailbox and back. And then we have ultra marathoners.
Wow.
And we have, cyclists and yogis and, people who do polar bear swims and just all kinds of cool things. So one of the things I like about it is just how many different things people are doing. And one of our members started a daily movement thread, which is one of my favorite things about the group. And I have, of course, as like most of my favorite things, nothing to do with it. But a member started it. And so every day people just kind of talk about what they're doing and where they're at. And it's amazing to read those. So
yeah. Well, I have some people in the Spiral Up Club, which is like a membership club for body kindness. And that's actually how I heard about Fit Fatties. And they just rave about it. And specifically to what you're saying is that you can't go anywhere just to talk about fitness without it being co-opted by diet culture and body shame. But this is the place you can go. So if you can just follow the damn rules, you'll really like it.
Exactly. And if you can't follow the damn rules, your stuff gets deleted. Then you get a message from me saying, follow damn rules. And then if you still can't follow the damn rules, you don't get to be in Fit Fatties anymore.
3 strikes and you're out. I get it. A baseball term, right? So I do have some questions for you, but before we get a little bit further into it, we've used the word several times, this 3-letter word that feels like a 4-letter word, the word fat. And just, really for the benefit of listeners, I know a lot of people still struggle with the word and using the word, no matter what size body they're in. And I've had people who were in kind of thin, ideal conforming bodies who feel like they want to be an ally and help in destigmatizing the word, but feel difficulty and don't really know where to go. So I think you would be a wonderful person to can we just talk about that for a few minutes? Like why, I know you've written about reclaiming the word fat, and I want to help people understand why it's so important, whether or not they decide to use, but terms matter and words matter. So can you share?
Sure. So I personally love the word fat. I like it for a lot of reasons. The first is that it doesn't pathologize my body size. So when you talk about words like overweight or obese, what that's saying is your body size is, a pathology. And I don't think that's true, and that's not how I'm going to talk about my body. And so fat is just a descriptor, like I'm short, I'm brunette, I'm fat. And another reason why I like to use the word fat is because, if somebody's picking me up for a speaking gig, I'll often say I'll be the short, fat brunette in a blue dress. And they'll say, oh, don't call yourself fat. But never in my life has somebody said, oh, don't call yourself brunette. Right. So the fact that we think that this descriptor of my physicality needs to be like the Voldemort of adjectives tells me that we need to talk about it. And one of the examples I often use, you've probably seen around Facebook, it'll say, you're not fat, you have fat. Just like you're not fingernails, you have fingernails. And every time I see that, I just want to hit my head against something really hard.
Actually, that sounds like fingernails going down a chalkboard to me.
It really is. And I'm just like, this is like, the fact that we feel, it's like saying, oh, I'm not brunette, I just have brown hair. Nobody does that. The fact that we feel the need to like do a dance around it to say you're not this thing tells me that we need to talk about being this thing. Right? I'm not short. I'm short. I'm not medically under tall. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Same with being fat.
Right.
So, and I also just like it because it tells my bullies they can't have my lunch money anymore.
Yeah.
I like reclaiming terms in that way. Right?
Yes. But now, but what if you are, thin ideal conforming and you're trying to use the word as an ally? That doesn't always, like, how can I have helping professionals who listen to the show, or just people who are like, ooh, I don't know if I can use that word. So, I mean, in your opinion, do you think that anyone can use it as long as they're using it as a descriptor? Or do you think that people with thin privilege may need to have conversations about why they're using the word so that they can exhibit their allyship?
Yeah, so it does get complicated because it is a word that's a word of derision, and not all fat people want to be identified as fat.
Oh.
And I do want to take a second and say that that's okay.
Okay.
Right? Each of us get to choose how we identify. I also like the word queer to describe myself, but I have friends, especially older friends in community, who cannot stand the word queer. Okay. And so I want to be respectful of that. So personally, I would rather be called literally anything than fluffy. But I know people who prefer fluffy. That is their preferred adjective. And that's their right.
Okay.
When you're living in a world where you're constantly stigmatized, you get to choose what words you want to use to identify yourself. And so that means that as a thin ally, it does become more complicated because you kind of have to know your audience. So, especially in activist spaces, I think using the word fat is fine. You can also, if you aren't sure if it's going to be taken badly, you're going to, because what you don't want to do is harm fat people with your use of fat.
Right.
And it's, it's unfortunate that we have this what should be a neutral descriptor that's got all of these, negative stereotypes piled on it. But that's what has happened.
Right.
And so you can use terms like people of size, which is, it doesn't have a charge on it because it's just not used a ton. So that's an option. There's plus size. I do not love plus size, but I use it sometimes if I'm trying to be neutral or if I'm, working with in media where it's like fat is going to be a problem. But I think too, talking about that is really important. So as a, thin ally, using the word fat, and then when people are stricken because they may be, the clutching of the pearls and such, you can explain, like a lot of fat people prefer to be called fat because there's nothing wrong with being fat.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially I think this is important when a like thinner person gets fat shamed. So like Lady Gaga got fat shamed and people were like, she's not even fat. And I'm like, okay, that's true, but is that the best defense? Because what if we just said, so what? It doesn't matter if she's fat. Our insistence on bringing up like she's not fat or she's not that fat, like sort of an in-betweeny person will get fat shamed. Well, she's not even that fat, because when you make that argument, what you're saying is if she was, this would be okay.
Right. Exactly. It's what I mean. Bob Harper does a lot of things to piss me off, but when he was on the Megyn Kelly show and he talked about, don't fat shame, but I prefer to use the terms firm kindness. I'm like, what the fuck is that, Bob? Firm kindness? Like that is can you just say there is nothing wrong with being fat? No, he can't. He has to infantilize fat people because otherwise no one would pay him because what he does doesn't work. Right? 95% of the people roughly who he works with are going to gain all their weight back. So the only way that he and people like him can continue to make money is by continuing to convince people that, one, it's their fault that this thing that doesn't work for anybody didn't work for them, and two, that thin people know better than you about your body, and I'm going to treat you with firm kindness, which, like that's what you say about a toddler. You know what I mean? Like, please don't throw that sippy cup again. Like, I love you very much, but I can't allow that to happen in this house. That's firm kindness. That's not how you treat a fat adult. Oh, that's so true. And it comes down to respect. At the end of the day, We are all humans. What the hell are you doing disrespecting people like that?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I have a whole list and we got stuff to talk about. So I'm just going to go in with the big guns. You are a Guinness World Record holder. Yay! So spill the beans.
Yeah, so I danced for a number of years, and then I moved from Austin to LA, and I lost my dance coach and my dance partner and the dance community there. And so I was thinking maybe I'll do a different challenge. And what I decided was that I wanted to. I've always done sports and athletics since I was a little kid, but I also only did things I was good at immediately. So like I played basketball one time in my life. I wasn't good at it. I never played again. And so I was like, there are probably lessons about myself as a person, myself as an athlete. I'm not learning because I'm never struggling with something. I'm never the worst because I just self-select out of those situations right away. And so
perfectionist much?
I know, right? It's an issue. So I was trying to think of what I would be the worst at, and distance running came up. In school they wanted me to run track and they wanted me to sprint and throw, which I would have been really good at. But I showed up the first day and they said, "All right, we start every practice with a 2-mile warm-up run." And I was like, "See ya. I'm not going to try." I literally quit track in the first 30 seconds because I was not willing to run 2 miles I'd rather shave my head with a cheese grater every day than run 2 miles every single day. So I was like, well, running seems to be the thing. And I was looking online just, how many people my size have run a marathon? And I kept coming upon these things of people who started to do a marathon, but then quit because they weren't losing weight. And I was like, what? Though I thought it was 26.2 miles, not some amount of pounds. And so that pissed me off enough to make me want to do it, which, for better or worse. So I found a marathon. I found a 20-week training program. I found a marathon that was 20 weeks away. It was in Seattle where my best friend lives. Messaged him and said, "Do you want to do a marathon with me?" And immediately he messaged back, "I'm in," which says a lot about the kind of best friend that he is. And so we did the Seattle Marathon. It was a debacle. I thought I was training for like an 8.5-hour marathon. It took over 12 hours. And I had chosen the marathon because Seattle keeps the finish line open until everybody crosses. But it was a straight up, worst day of my life. So maybe not the worst.
You wanted to come in last place, right?
Did I get my money's worth on this struggling? So then I found out after I finished that marathon that I could have gotten a Guinness World Record for heaviest woman to complete a marathon. But you cannot do it retroactively. So I was like, well, shit, I have to do another one of these. And I was like, I liked the idea of having a Guinness record. I am in love with medals. By the way, my motto is always cross finish line, get medal. So I was like, well, if I did another marathon, I'd get an extra medal from Guinness. Turns out you get a certificate, but luckily I didn't know that at that time. So I was trying to psych myself up because I just couldn't make myself go train again. And I was listening to all these audiobooks of endurance athletes, and a lot of them had completed Ironman triathlons. And I knew a coach from Austin, Steve Blackman, who had completed several, and we had talked about that. And I was like, man, I wonder if I could do that. And it would sort of be the ultimate expression of this challenge to get out of my comfort zone because I could do 3 sports I suck at for like a really long time.
3 sports for the price of one.
Over long distances. I could suck really bad for 17 hours. So I decided to try that. And I thought as part of this Ironman journey, I would run another marathon. And so I'm now in the 4th year of my 2-year journey to do an Ironman. Again, debacle does not even begin to describe this experience. I'm absolutely getting my money's worth on the struggling part of this. Right. But so last year, I decided to do my marathon. And I chose, there's a group called Mainly Marathons, MAINLY marathons.com. And they do these super slow, people-friendly marathons. So they find rural areas. They do a looped course. So it's like a couple miles. And so they only have to set up one aid station. They don't have to close down any roads. And so you can stay out there for 27 hours. They don't care. So I picked that marathon, and it was in Maine. And the idea was that it was going to be about 60 degrees and sunny, but it was a shaded course. And that's a pretty good temperature. Heat is not my friend. So I was looking for a paved flat course and a cool temperature, and that's what it was about. And then a good friend of mine who is a fat personal trainer lives near there, and she was willing to help with all the Guinness stuff.
I just think that's so amazing. And I got to imagine that the people at Guinness are like really, really perfectionist on how you have to qualify because it's a pretty big deal. So like, what did you have to go through? What did they do to make you verify like, yes, I've achieved it all?
Yeah, so Guinness doesn't play around. You can do a couple things. You can have a Guinness person come and fly in and certify your race on site, but that cost $6,000. So that was financially out of reach. Yeah. So the other option is to self-certify. So you have to do several things. First of all, the weigh-in. It had to be conducted by someone with a medical or healthcare license. It had to be on a scale that weighed me to the gram. A gram is about the weight of a paperclip. Yeah, right? And
so what's your grams amount? Do you know what the point, whatever?
I can't remember. It's I weigh a lot of grams, many paper clips. It was 288 point something was my weight in pounds. But yeah, and you have to calculate your weight based on the pull of gravity at that exact latitude and longitude point. So we had to get a physics professor involved. My certification paperwork involved an equation with Greek letters that I did not understand at all. I was like, let me just fax this along. I assume someone at Guinness knows what this means. So, and then you have to have a camera on you at all times. And so luckily it was a looped course. So we had my poor
GoPro. Do you have a GoPro?
Two GoPros. It was like packing for an expedition. So the GoPro batteries only last about an hour.
Oh, no.
Right? So we had 2 GoPros, 12 batteries, and 12 SD cards because it was a 12-loop course. And after every loop, I would go to our van, which I named the Mothership after in a nod to Dean Karnassus, an ultra runner. And Julianne, my poor partner, would have the new GoPro with a battery and SD card. She would give me the new one. I would give her the old one. I would clip it onto my race belt, complete the lap, and we would do that every time. You also have to have witnesses, 2 witnesses at all times. They can only work for 4 hours. They can't know each other. I mean, it's nuts. And everybody has to fill out paperwork. And so Julianne is also coordinating witnesses who are canceling moments before they're supposed to show up. And like literally, if these people don't come, I don't get the record. And so she had backups, and she's on Craigslist. It was completely nuts. And so yeah, all of that. And one of my favorite things I will tell you is the witness forms. So because they have to complete in their own words what happens. So some of them were like, I watched Reagan complete 3 laps. Like, okay. But some of them were like, she came in obviously tired and, did her thing. And then she got a piece of banana and then forged on ahead. And I was just like, I heart you so hard, witness.
Do you have copies of these? Because I would have a big like Guinness box of just like.
Oh, yeah. Totally. It was like the sweetest, some of these witness statements. So cute. But yeah. And so in addition to this, like I said, it was supposed to be 60 and sunny. It was instead 40 degrees, 20-mile-an-hour winds, and it rained the whole day.
Oh.
And the course was supposed to be flat, but instead it was sort of undulating in the first half. And then the second half of the loop was just 3 hills. So you went down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then you went around the turnaround cone, and then you went down, up, down, up, down. And so on the first loop, I was like, because I don't train on hills at all. And now I was doing the math, like I'm going to have to do 72 hills today. And I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I can do this. But I was like, I've got all these Guinness people here. There's a film crew, like, all of this stuff. And so I was like, and then by like halfway through, I was like, I can't. They had changed it from a 12-loop course to a 14-loop course because of the rain. So I was like, man, I don't think I can do this 7 more times. And so what I literally decided was, look, it's a looped course. There are tons of people out here. I'm going to go until I collapse. And if I collapse, they're going to find me.
Okay.
And if I don't collapse, I'm going to cross the finish line and nothing else matters. Like I had all these intervals and a time goal, and I was just like, I'm going to either cross the finish line or collapse, but that's how today's going to end. And I ended up crossing the finish line. So yay.
Yay. Well, that is just an amazing story. And as much as I guess 50% believe you with respect to I wanted the medal / certificate and I'm going to cross or collapse, one of those are happening. I want to say you probably have a deeper, bigger, more meaningful reason for why. So what is the real why before why you had to do this? Because I don't think it has anything to do with you, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I definitely, I'm not lying when I say I love that medal. But, that's a big part of it. But also, there isn't space made, literally or figuratively, for fat athletes. In a lot of sports, or for slow athletes. And those are 2 separate things. So I set the record because I want the record to be broken. I set the record, I went through all of it for visibility because there are fatter women who have completed marathons, certainly probably much faster than I have. But there's not visibility there. And so again, people tell me, oh, I've always wanted to do a 5K or 10K or a marathon, but I was told that at my size, I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so there's this idea of like, don't even try. And in fact, some of the doctors I read were like, if you're over 20% of your ideal weight, you should not even attempt a marathon. And I was like, well, that's some bullshit. And
so here's a research study that shows that exercise is good at, I won't use the O word, but it's like, okay, oh, but don't move, but oh, it's helpful. It's like, it's whiplash. It's information whiplash.
Well, and it's this, again, that firm kindness, right? Look fatty, exercise, but not like that, right?
You're not allowed in this club.
Yeah. We want you to exercise, but in your house wearing an outfit fashioned from a bed sheet because we don't make athletic clothes in your size. Bingo. And with the windows drawn, please. And I want to be really clear. This is super important.
Okay.
Nobody of any size is obligated to exercise at all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. While having a Netflix marathon and running a marathon are morally equivalent activities. I do this because I like to do it and I want to make space for other people who want to try it. But there's no, neither fitness nor health nor body size is an obligation, a barometer of worthiness entirely within our control. Mm-hmm. People have different abilities and we don't want to get into ableism and healthism and, all of that. And this idea of quote unquote promoting fitness.
Right.
What I want to promote is do what you want to do. And nobody is obligated to participate in fitness, but everybody should be welcome.
Yeah.
No, so that's a big part of why I get out there.
Yeah, I mean, that it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just thinking of when I talked to Ijeoma Oluo, who talked about power structures and that visibility matters in order to shift power structures. So being out there, doing it, getting TV coverage, that is... by doing that, the visibility is doing more to shift the power structures, and you can hold highly your value of not promoting healthism and ableism, just exactly how you did here and in other writings and other works, but that all helps to shift the group in power, which the idea is that it's not one, magical thing that's going to suddenly happen, but like a lot of these efforts, right? And not just you, but how your decisions make waves for others to, perhaps be inspired by you. Like I was inspired when I first met you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of fat activism, especially in the fitness world, is I always say just show up fat and refuse to leave.
I love that.
Because, there's all kinds of reasons you shouldn't do it. Not only am I fat, but I'm also slow. And so slow runners get a ton of crap for just not being as fast as people think they should be. Mm-hmm. And so as a slow fat person, I'm like sort of, moving into what people consider a stereotype of fat runners, which is an interesting place to be because as a dancer, people are always like, oh, you don't dance like you're fat. And I'm like, no, I don't dance like you think fat people should dance. Like the problem is your perception. And so I am meeting an expectation as a slow fat runner, which is a different place to come from. Mm-hmm. And so there's also power in saying, yup, I'm slow, I'm fat, and I'm still going to do this marathon.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
If you don't want to wait around for me to finish, go home, eat some spaghetti and come back. It's fine. I don't mind.
I love it. I love it so much. So I got to imagine through this experience, you're dancing and fit fatties and all these things that you're doing in the fitness world, that you have some thoughts and opinions about what you feel we all misunderstand about movement. I'm thinking in particular about movement at higher weights. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. Like, what are we not getting? What are we, let's do some myth busting here.
Yeah, so many thoughts about this. So I think it at some point all boils down to the idea that every body is different and unique. And so instead of making guesses about what people's bodies can do at different sizes, like I waited a long time for a thin body to show up. I was like, remember that book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret? Where every day she's like looking, waiting for her breast to grow.
My bust.
Yeah, right? Like, so that was never a problem for me, but I was waiting for like a thin body to show up and I was going to start my life. And one day I was like, I'm going to take my fat body out for a spin. And I'm just going to see what it can do. And maybe it can do stuff and maybe it can't, but like maybe I don't wait for my whole life. And part of that is hearing people say, my mom was on her deathbed and, she never did anything she wanted to do because she never got thin. And I was like, that's not going to be me. I'm not going down like that. So I was like, let's take this fat body out for a spin. And then So the first thing is try it. Do what you want to do, which is easier said than done because you have to find somebody who will work with you. I found an amazing dance coach. I found an amazing triathlon coach who are happy to work with me as a fat athlete without, trying to get me to lose weight. But not everyone is. When I used to take dance lessons from like guest coaches, anytime I would have any problem with the move, they'd be like, oh, well, it's just your size. And I'm like, well, do thin people have a problem with this? Well, yeah. What do you tell them? Oh, well, there's 6 different technique things you can do. And okay, well, let's try that first. Like, let's try to actually fix my technique. And so there's finding the support you need, which can be trickier, and to me, it was just about calling around. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. Do you want to coach me under these circumstances? And if not, that's fine. I mean, I do the same thing with doctors, right? Like I require health at every size based care. Are you willing to do that or not? And so there's that part, but then there's looking at, physics is a thing. So like as a dancer, I did a lot of weightlifting because I had to be strong enough to move my body through space. And I was constantly told, oh, dancers don't lift weights. And I was like, thanks for that, but I'm a dancer and I lift weights because that's what allows me. So it's also about working with your body and saying, okay, how do I maybe need to modify this? And that's what, like I said, all bodies are different. So a short runner is going to have different technique maybe than a very tall runner. And that's okay. And we're sort of fine modifying for things like that. For disabled people with disabilities, there's lots of ways that we can modify, but too often instead those folks are just excluded. The same thing happens to trans and binary athletes because they don't fit the male female. And so we don't know how to categorize them. So we just leave them out. So it's, how do I make this work for me? The idea to me is that I'm going to make this sport work for my body, not I'm going to change my body to work for this sport. That's not the deal. And so I think the big myth is that you should modify your body for the sport rather than you should modify the sport for your body. And that's what we have to get past and say, if our core goal was how can everybody be welcome in whatever sport they want to do, then we would have a very different outlook on how we work with people, on how we do equipment and clothing and everything. And so that's where we've got to come from, is how do we make everybody welcome and comfortable and, able to participate in the way and to the level that they want to participate.
Yeah, I've got so many things, but I just feel like I got to get this one out first. I mean, the idea about the right clothing and equipment that performs for you and that how it's a way to exclude fat people. It's just bullshit, A. And it always reminds me of Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. I got money to spend in this place.
I know, right?
It's people want to engage, but when you don't offer opportunities, it is a real barrier. And then it just fuels the system of thinking. So anyone at any weight could say, well, they're physically active and I don't identify as an exerciser. And you could decide that you want to change that. And like you were saying earlier, it could be anything that you decide and evolve. And one day you're setting the Guinness World Record, right? But people at lower weights don't have the barrier of what's the right equipment for this or how am I going to get clothes that fit. And so we have to acknowledge that and say, this is a problem and we've got to fix it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Getting dressed for the Ironman is, I think, more stressful than training for the Ironman. There's one wetsuit in the whole world that fits me.
Oh my God.
One triathlon wetsuit. If they stop making that, I bought an extra one just to have.
You're going to sew something yourself.
I know. And I called and there were people who did custom wetsuits and they were like, oh no, well we do them for elite athletes. So we would have no idea how to make a wetsuit for someone your size. So literally I almost couldn't do my Ironman because you can't swim in 55-degree water with no wetsuit for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So it is. And, especially when you're in the regular forums and people are like, oh my gosh, so cute. Look at my new running clothes. And you're like, yeah, I can have anything I want as long as it's black. So I love your coral and teal attire, but go to hell because I'm wearing black on black again. And so it's, and not being able to get the performance is a big thing. So there's a tendency when, I kind of talked about this earlier, when you've got a fat athlete to blame everything on their size. Right? Oh, you're not comfortable on the bike. It's because you're too big. And not because you can't get the right bike shorts because they don't make them. it's so
or
we don't
just
talk about those things.
Yeah. Or like a road bike is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and and bike shorts are crucial when you're on the bike.
Yeah, non-optional on a 50-mile ride. That becomes pretty non-optional, at least for me. Maybe there are people who are out there just doing it in spandex, but I'm looking for my
padding,
tri-shorts for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah,
body glide.
Yeah. And having a bike, I just was able to, through a guy who gave us an amazing deal, get a custom bike because I'm not only short and fat, but I'm mostly made of torso. So like I'm 5'3", but I have basically no legs. And so trying to get a bike that worked for me and where I wasn't like kicking my stomach, because at the cadence I do, it's about 20,000 times every 2 hours that I would kick myself in the stomach with one or the other. That's a lot. And the bike that I'm doing is like 6 to 8 hours long. Yeah. So, not that fun. Yeah. And so just getting fit on a bike and getting comfortable in a way that thin people get automatically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is like a huge deal to do, and we don't talk about that. What we want to do is blame somebody's size. And so we say, well, if you were thin, you would get, better clothes, rather than saying you need better clothes at your size.
How would you help somebody deal with those barriers? Because those barriers can be a reason to just avoid, which, on an individual level can mean, well, they don't get to engage in something that they wanted to challenge themselves with, or, something that they could eventually find interesting, which is unfortunate. And then it also kind of hurts the visibility piece. So is there any advice that you would have, like when we can say, okay, there's going to be some barriers, to help them handle, process, and manage it, to maybe kind of, you figured out how to, I guess, what do we say? Like, I guess, push yourself into this system that's not fit for you.
Yeah. So the first thing I always want to make clear is, while this is becoming like your problem, it's not your fault. And that sucks. It sucks that it's becoming, our problem to deal with. But it's important to remember that we didn't cause this problem by existing in fat bodies. The world caused this problem by not being opening and welcoming and accommodating to fat bodies. So we're not the problem, but we're still having to become the solution. And so I also think it's important, each of us has to choose, like, how much activism do we want to do and how hard do we want to push against the world? And that depends on a lot of things, what someone else has going on, financial resources that they can put into it. If I had all the money in the world, it would be a bit different, because I could have, seamstresses making and tailors making clothes for me, and that kind of thing. So it depends. Resources are a real big part of this. But I think the only way, as you were saying with that Ijeoma Oluo said, that visibility is what creates change. Without visibility, there's no change. And so part of it is inserting ourselves and then being loud about it, right? If I'm showing up somewhere and I don't get to be dressed like everybody else is, they're going to know about it. And one of the things that it does is it hampers disability, because you cap out at a certain point. Right? You can't be on the national team if they don't make a national team kit that fits you. And so it's just continuing, to me, to show up, to figure out ways to, share with each other. We do a lot in Fit Fatties about, does anybody have a sports bra that will work for me? And so it's finding these little places.
But that's a good point, is to let people know that they aren't alone, right? That's probably another kind of, there's going to be problems, and it's not your fault, but with you, there is community support, right, through Fit Fatties, and just like, and that kind of helps in removing barriers, or maybe helps boost your own confidence, because there is, anyone changing anything would have lack of certainty, would, you kind of, where you don't, like confidence isn't super high, and you end up learning and getting through it. So to kind of frame that, like, it's not my body that's causing this uncertainty. It's behavior changes and, things can create uncertainty, but I have extra difficulties, uncertainties, but I also have resources that I could reach out to, and a sense of community. Like, I can really see that being a really helpful.
Yeah. I think one of the most common things is when you do 5Ks and stuff, you get a t-shirt usually. And there's a joke that, people say, why do you do it? Well, I do it for the t-shirt. And typically these t-shirts come up, if you're lucky, to 2X. But the two X's, everybody else will have a t-shirt assigned to them, but the two X's will be like, oh, there's a box of two X's. And if somebody thinner wants one for a nightgown, then they don't have any and it's very frustrating. And they'll always like, well, you can make a quilt out of it. Yes, I could. Like, I could also make a dog bed out of it. I know how to fashion things out of fabric. That's not my point. My point is that you get to wear a shirt, and then there again is visibility. Right? In a culture where there is privilege attached, for better or worse, to wearing around a shirt that says Seattle Marathon, I don't have that option. Even though I completed the Seattle Marathon like everybody else, because the Seattle Marathon didn't have a shirt. Right. And so part of it is a lot of people on Fit Fatties will post their victories of like, I emailed the race directors and I said, this isn't okay. You don't make a shirt in my size. What are you going to do? You know, how do I get a 4X? And in some cases, they say, sorry, we can't do it. In a lot of cases, unfortunately. But in some cases, there'll be that victory where they're like, we're having one printed for you. And next year, we'll go up to a higher size. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean.
Yeah. Which I shouldn't be grateful for that. Like, I'm pissed at myself that I'm grateful for that.
It's hard because you're like, thank you very much. And also, why did I have to take my time to get this basic shit?
Exactly.
Yeah. So part of it is just saying, look, I'm here, I'm doing this race just like everybody else. And, you know, there's also people act like fat people asking for stuff like that is asking for something special, right? Whether it's asking for an airline seat that accommodates us or asking for a t-shirt at a marathon. Well, you always want something special. No, I want what everyone else already has.
Exactly.
Everyone else gets a shirt that fits them. I want a shirt that fits me. Everyone else on this airplane gets a seat that they fit into for this trip that they paid for. I want a seat that I fit into for this trip that I paid for. I'm only asking for what everyone else already gets. This is not about asking for something special.
Exactly.
And so I think that's a big part of it too, is just saying, you know, fat people are here. We're doing the same things that other people are, but you're not treating us the same. And that's not okay. I want my damn t-shirt.
Yeah. And I think, as in my experience as an ally, is noticing those injustices and where I have opportunities to raise awareness in others, whether it's my professional peers or in working with clients, is taking those opportunities.
Oh, that's such a huge part of ally work, because while it is emotionally draining for you, no doubt. And while I hugely appreciate the work that the allies do, it's different because if they reject you, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the idea that other people should be accommodated. And so there's a bit of a difference. Like when I go into doctor's offices, if the only gender on the forms is male and female, I always bring it up and push it as far as I can that it doesn't work. Because it's not emotionally hurtful to me. It's not yet another time shutting me down. So as an ally to trans and non-binary folks, I can do that with less cost than there would be for them. So yeah, you know, if you're in a race and you see the shirts only go up to extra large, send an email. I would love to invite some of my other friends, but these shirts don't fit them. And I'm not about to invite people to pay for a race, you know, and so I'm not going to do it either. You know, is there something that you can do to make sure a big part of ally work is sacrifice, right? They have a t-shirt that fits you. You'll be welcome at the race. No problem. You want to do the race, but maybe you don't. Maybe you say, you know, and if my friends can't come, then I don't want to participate either.
Right.
And I'm not going to ask them to have a lesser experience than I have and shrug it off and say, well, I mean, what are you going to do? Did you really expect us to make a shirt in your size? Yes. Yes, I did. You know, so that's a huge part of ally work.
Those are some great ideas. Yeah. Yeah. And there's always going to be work to do. And I get that a lot too. And it's like, you know, it does come back to self-care. There will always be work to do, but that doesn't, you got to kind of keep doing it and re-energize. And when you see the benefits of something, that helps to re-energize. But you don't want to underestimate the power of just using your voice, right? Like that fear wants you to stay quiet, small, sit down, shut up, that kind of thing. It's like, let that voice say what it's going to say, but that voice is just as big as a thought bully, and do what you know is right anyway.
Yeah. And do it in your own way. So there's all different kinds of ways to ask for stuff. I spend a lot of time very politely asking people if they wouldn't mind so much not oppressing me. You know?
If you
wouldn't mind so much,
stop the oppression.
It would be great. And I stand by that. I don't apologize for it because it's a completely valid tool. And because sometimes it's just easier for me to send an email and say, hey, maybe you didn't think about it, but your shirts only go up to XL and people go up much higher. And people who run fast, you know, so that's fine too. But it's also fine if you're like, I'm sick of this, and let me tell you in a much more strong way with maybe a couple F-bombs how I feel. And so it takes all different kinds of activists. It takes all different types of activism. Different things will work with different people and you'll never know. And then the other thing, I saw this on like Facebook and it wasn't attributed, but it was the idea. I was a musician. I went to school on an orchestra scholarship. I went to college on an orchestra scholarship. And there's
sweet. What
clarinet.
instrument did you play?
Yeah, it was awesome. I got to play Carnegie Hall and but yeah, but
Cool.
So there's a thing in music called staggered breathing. And it happens when the composer wants you to play a note or sing a note longer than is physically possible in a group situation. And so what you do is staggered breathing. So some people drop out and take a breath while other people keep singing. And then those people who kept singing drop out and take a breath. And so it sounds like it's a one continuous note, but everybody's able to take their breath, their rest. And the person was making the point that activism is very much like this. Like we can't all go out there and be an activist 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so you get to stop and take a breath and know that other people will still be working. And so we'll be one long continuous bit of activism, even though each of us will be taking the breaks and the rest that we need. And so self-care is also really important in that respect.
Oh, I love that. So I have a couple more questions. Some I think are going to be a little more quick than others because we've already talked a little bit about the doctor's office. So I want to say that I share that link like nobody's business because you actually have a card that people can say, please, doctor, stop being a jerk, stop screwing it up. And you had mentioned that you advocate for health at every size-based care. So anything you want to say in that regard, whether it's a resource or a tip or like, yes, demand this out of healthcare. What would you like to say there?
So people of all sizes deserve competent healthcare. Suggesting weight loss is not competent healthcare because there's no reason to believe that it will work for more than a tiny fraction of people. So that's an important thing to remember. And you deserve the same care thin people get. So my number one biggest tip for getting health at every size-based care is that when your doctor suggests weight loss, and it happens, I've had weight loss suggested for a separated toe, a separated shoulder, a broken toe, and strep throat. Right. So it doesn't matter what you go in there. You could be holding a severed limb and they're going to be like, what are you doing about your weight? Well, I lost this 30-pound arm.
I can't talk,
I was like,
doctor. Oh, it's your
my God,
weight.
I was so sick. I ended up banging on the counter. So the thing to ask is, well, do thin people get this health problem? And the answer is going to be yes. And then if you, you have a couple options, you can say, what I basically say is, well, I would like to try that first. What do you do for thin people with this health problem? Let's do that first. And then if you really want to appease them, you can say, if that doesn't work, we can talk about weight loss at that point. I'm never going to talk about weight loss, but they don't, if you have to manipulate a fat phobic doctor to get care, like I want doctors to step up and do the right thing, but I want people who are being killed by fat phobia to get the treatment that they need. So whatever it takes to get the treatment, whatever kind of like lying and manipulation you have to do to get your doctor to give you basic competent care, unfortunately, is sometimes what you have to do. And so like if I have to tell the doctor, oh yeah, sure, I'll go to, a seminar about stomach amputation if you'll just give me antibiotics for the strep throat. Like I might do that. Or if I feel better, I might say, let's talk about how many people die from stomach amputation and, how many people wish they did from this, So you have to choose how much of an activist you want to be. And a lot of things go into that. And I have a lot of privilege around that because one, I know I can quote studies off the top of my head because it's my job. And because I just sort of was born unintimidated. And so for a lot of people, the power of a doctor is really hard to overcome. I don't have that. And I have a lot of doctors. I live in LA. So if I don't like a doctor, I just say, never mind. I walk out and I go see another doctor. Not everybody does that. So I do want to be clear about that. But yeah, but the most, to me, even without having to have any kind of health at every size discussion, you just go, do thin people get this? Okay. What do you do for thin people? And that can really lead to much better care.
Yeah. Oh, so important. And I'll be sure to include the link to that on the show notes as well. I know this is not a short answer and we could probably have a whole separate podcast about it and probably should. But if I could award you another medal, it is the queen of putting trolls in their place. So I know you get trolled a lot. It sucks. They have an agenda when they do it. What can we tell listeners about trolling and how to handle trolls?
Oh my gosh, this is so I just wrote a thing. I'll send you a link for a thing called Better Humans about like understanding and dealing with online trolls. So the thing to remember about online trolls is that they're not truth seekers. Right? They are, and they will make it sound like they are, and their goals are to get you to shut down your work. Their goals are to discredit you. My trolls mostly focus on trying to discredit me. So anytime I get booked for a speaking gig, they email and make a series of accusations about how I'm a terrible person and liar and all this kind of stuff. And so, that's what you have to understand is these people aren't coming for truth. It's not that they don't understand you. It's that they are trying to hurt you. And some of them are, a few of them are the thinkers and they're creating this situation. And the rest are just, we call them in the article, the zombie army, right? They're just going where they're not the best and the brightest for sure, but they have Wi-Fi and free time and the desire to hate someone. And so they're just going where they're told and saying what they're told to say. And so there's lots of different ways you can, the advice you get the most often is, don't feed the trolls. This idea that if you ignore them, they'll go away. And I don't think that was great advice in junior high, and I don't think it's great advice now. They, in my experience, they don't go away. And because they're trolls, if you don't respond, they'll say that, or if you do respond to them, they'll say, oh, well, I only engaged because they responded. But if you don't respond, they'll say, well, I engaged because they didn't respond. You know why? Because they're trolls. So my concern is always for the person being trolled. Like, I don't care about the bully's feelings. I don't care about the bully's goals. I don't care about the bully that much at all. I care about the person being bullied. So if standing up to trolls makes you feel better and more empowered, then do it. If ignoring trolls makes you feel better and empowered, then do it. Do different things on different days depending on how you feel. For me, I strictly moderate all my spaces. I used to think that I had to allow trolls. I used to fall for that argument that, like, well, if you really believed in open debate and not censoring people, you'd let, anybody who can figure out the comment button, comment on your blog. But what I realized was that we create these spaces and we draw these audiences, and we don't have the obligation to turn them over to anybody who can manage to leave a comment. And so I get to decide what is said in my space, just like I get to decide what is said in my house. I consider my blog like my house. I wouldn't let somebody come in here, and bully me in my house.
Trash a place.
And so I'm not going to let them do it there. So remember that you control your online spaces. And remember, again, this is becoming your problem, but this is not your fault. They're in the wrong 100%. And one of the talks I give, especially to kids, is called "The World is Messed Up, You're Fine."
Ah, I love it.
And that super applies to this situation. Yeah. And so acknowledge that it sucks, and acknowledge, some people have decided to shut down blogs or to get out of the public eye because of trolling. And that is a legitimate choice. You have to take care of you first. So like what I did, I have a site where I put up some of my more creative hate mail and I responded to it in my pithy, sarcastic way. And that helped me feel better. And it was kind of fun. And I also have it's a fundraising site so people can click and donate to me. So my trolls actually generate income so that I can pay my bills and activism. And so I have these buttons don't feed the trolls, do feed the activists, click here. And that's been amazing. And
send me that link. I want to include it in the show notes.
I will send it for sure. But yeah, and so that made me feel better. And also I want them to know you are helping me continue activism. Right? Because people donate from this site, I can keep paying my rent and my bills. And a lot of the work that I do, I do speaking gigs and writing that's paid, but the majority of the work I do, I answer well over 10,000 emails every month from people looking for help or support or links or, graduate students who want me to do their research for them, which I'm happy to do. If you're a graduate student out there, I'm happy to help you. But yeah, and so they're allowing me to do that work that I do and don't get paid for. And I just appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I have one final question, and this one's for the listeners who might be helping professionals. I'm thinking primarily dietitians, which love that the word die and diet is in our name, but that is another topic. But, who may be just, from a genuine place, trying just to work it all out. And, I just would love, whether it's be careful of these common mistakes or some advice you might have for them, to where you talk about offering compassionate, weight-inclusive care. What is it that somebody who is a helping professional can do more to just move fat activism along? We talked a lot centered around movement today. So just whatever kind of comes to your mind, what would be some piece of advice you can give?
Sure. So I think assume that people's bodies will take care of setting their weight, and teach them that as well. So whatever their goals are in working with you in terms of health, focus on things that they can control, right? Behaviors that people can control rather than outcomes, and especially rather than any kind of body size outcome. Just let them know, your body will figure out what weight it wants to be at. We're not in control of that process, and we don't try to manipulate that process because nothing good comes from that. So what are you actually wanting to accomplish? And be clear that fat phobia is a problem, not fat bodies. Because there's that idea that like, well, you'd be treated better if you were thin. And that is true. And I don't want to lie about that. But the problem there is fat phobia. It's not a client who's fat in a fat phobic world.
Yeah. And I think that's a key point because it is important to be curious and seek to understand and know that even if you're listening, it's like, oh, but you're much further ahead than I am, Rebecca. It's like, I was there too and making even worse mistakes. So, welcome.
Oh yeah. I leave my blog up from 2009 so people can see my progression of fucking up. Like I still fuck up, but now in new and different ways, hopefully. But yeah. And I think the one thing that is for, helping professionals that I want to be clear about is in our culture, it's considered okay to, and Deb Brigard was the first person who pointed this out to me. It's considered okay to prescribe to fat people what we would diagnose in thin people. So if I went to the doctor and I said, I weigh myself every day, I count every calorie, I never go over X number of calories, I keep a diary of every single thing I eat, and if I ever go over, then I exercise 2 extra. And I was thin, the doctor would say, hopefully, wow, those are some red flags. Let's talk about this. But as a fat person, I've been prescribed that exact behavior by doctors, even though they knew I had recovered from an eating disorder. And so we have to realize that if something isn't good for somebody, it's not good for them. There's no, behavior that is harmful to thin people, but super helpful to fat people that we should prescribe to them.
And just accept that the bias has been deeply ingrained. And I guess in that compassionate way of like, it's not your fault too, right? Like, I don't think we're born in, asking to, have fat phobia. It is ingrained in us and it's embraced in the medical community. It's the core essence of the dietetics training. And then now suddenly we're asking you to say, you know what, maybe somebody, does self-care through movement and balanced plate and, has, cake, like people have cake and this and that. And they don't get thin and they ain't never going to get thin. And maybe that's okay. Like that is radical.
Yeah.
and it does go against a lot of past experience, but that doesn't mean that you should shut yourself down to that. Just keep being open.
Yeah. I think it's important to keep in mind exactly what you're saying. I mean, whenever I talk to doctors, I say, we're going to talk about some things that doctors do. And if you've done these things, if you have these beliefs, like that wouldn't exactly be a galloping shock because they taught it to you in medical school. It's all around. But like, let's really critically think about it. And I think I look back, like they used to prescribe heroin as a non-addictive substitute for morphine. Mm-hmm. Oops.
Oops.
Sorry, people with vaginas, but Lysol was a douche. Oops. Right? Medical science has been fucking up for a long time and will continue to. It's a science, it's evolving, it's a practice of medicine, it's a practice of dietetics. And so know that you're going to mess up, but you've try to be on a know better, do better path and seek to know better. Make it your mission to know better so that you can do better.
Mm-hmm. That's true. We're so afraid of making mistakes that we end up doing nothing. And that is going to be your big mistake, Yep.
Yeah. Do something. I mean, there's this like adage of like, if something's bad, do something. If it gets better, do more of that. If it gets worse, do something else. Right? I learned it as a consultant. I used to do like turnaround, when you walk into a business that's failing, like do something and then judge the results. So like, just, do something, try to do better, speak out one more time than you normally would have. Be brave and, interrupt a conversation about body shaming to say, yeah, I'm not cool with that. And I'm not going to let it go by, do something and you will make the world better little bits at a time.
Reagan, this has been so awesome. I'm so grateful for all the time and wisdom you shared today. Where can people connect with you and learn more about you and all the wonderful work you're doing? And what'd you say? It's don't feed the trolls, feed the fat activists.
Feed the fat activists. Yeah. So you can find my blog is danceswithfat.org. if you're interested in my Ironman journey, which you may not because it's kind of like watching a
5
really
years later.
boring color of paint dry, it's ironfat.com. And then my writing and speaking site is Sized for Success, Sized, SIZED for success.com. And they can find me there as well. And then I'm just Reagan at danceswithfat.org is my email. Email me for no reason at all, just to say hi.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all the work that you do. I really do appreciate you.
And that's our show. Let's continue this conversation in our Facebook group. Just search Body Kindness Podcast and ask to join the group. We also love ratings and reviews. Please subscribe to the Body Kindness Podcast and give us an honest rating and review. And if you can, tell a friend. If you'd like to support the podcast for the 2018 season, please donate at gofundme.com/bodykindness.